Hi, I'm David Himel, Himel Brothers Leather. Today I'm going to be talking about the Grizzly jacket. The Grizzly jacket, or what is more appreciably also known as the bear jacket. What is a bear jacket? One, bear jackets in the vintage clothing world were some of the most valuable and collected leather jackets. I suspect it's because they were always early, meaning they typically were made between the 30s and the 40s. I suspect it's because they're rare to find in good condition. They're rare because they're weirdly cool. Now, we could talk about what cool means. And there are decades of cultural studies and theoreticians talking about the nature of cool. But I think, in this case, in specific to the Grizzly jacket or the bear jacket, what made them cool was their over-the-top nature, their rareness in terms of taking a fashion risk at a time when people wore uniforms. What I mean by that is in the 1930s and the 1940s and the 1950s, people really had a sense of trying to fit in. There was a strong social contract in Canada and the United States. And so you had the majority of people wearing a uniform to work, the right suit, or the right coverall if they were a delivery man, or their work uniform. They had military discipline coming out of the military. They had their off-work look. And it was a very narrowly defined set of aesthetic choices. A lot of them had to do with showing commitment to your job. It still goes on in Asia today. And a lot of it showed commitment to your economic middle class lifestyle, which was burgeoning in America and Canada after the New Deal, the great expansion after World War II. In contrast, whenever you have people trying to fit in, you have people trying to rebel against fitting in. The leather jacket in the 30s was often purpose-built, worn for racing, worn for delivering, worn for working. And the Grizzly jacket was one of those rare jackets that seemed like it was built for fashion. And in that sense, it wasn't built to fit in. It was built to fit out. And I think that's what gives this genre of leather jackets its exceptional nature. So that's some jacket nerd stuff. What makes a Grizzly jacket? Why do they call it a bear jacket? The earliest ones that I've seen show up in my collecting were from the 30s. And this is an exception to the late 19th century where you typically had men wearing fur coats. But we're talking a motorcycle style jacket or a work style jacket in which some of the panels were made of fur instead of leather. So if you were imagine making a motorcycle jacket or a work jacket, but taking the two front panels and making them out of fur, this was what they called a Grizzly jacket or a bear jacket. Now, we could argue it's because it made you look like a bear. I'm not 100% sure how the name or the term came about, because certainly in the catalogs of the 30s and 40s, they didn't call it a Grizzly jacket. Why was this a rebellious statement? Well, one, people wear fur for warmth. Having just two front fur panels is more about an aesthetic choice. It's certainly not about warmth. And actually, you often see at the turn of the century that people would make jackets with a leather on the outside and a fur on the inside, because certainly they would be warmer that way. So why fur panels? Because it just doesn't seem practical. If it's a work jacket, you wouldn't want fur on the outside. That would get damaged. If it's a motorcycle jacket, you wouldn't want fur on the outside. It would get damaged. And yet, you see in men's catalogs of the 30s and 40s and 50s, It's quite common, pardon me, I had a tin of sardines, quite common to see these jackets as the sort of outlier in a collection of men's jackets from the catalog order stores. I can't speak to what the men of the 20s, 30s, 40s, and 50s were thinking, but I can say that it was clear that these were kind of radical outside looks and designs. I can tell you the earliest ones pre-catalog were more like custom jobs where someone said, put the fur on the outside from a small shop maker. And I suspect that these were people that came back from World War One and came back from World War Two and really had a little bit, I mean, if I could imagine this person, a little bit of PTSD, a little bit of rebellion, a little bit of spirit of adventure, and a little bit of high fashion, maybe a little bit gay. Whatever the makeup, these jacks weren't typical. They were over the top, and they were fragile because typically they were made with sheepskin fur, which really doesn't hold up over time. So you see this very interesting transition of the creation of the bear jacket, in my experience. You get these 1930s ones, which were there are just some hair-on panels of goat or cow fur. There was a famous manufacturer, King of Fur. They went from making horse blankets, and when the carriages were being displaced by cars, they started making one of the earliest grizzly jackets, which was like a goat or horse fur jacket with leather sleeves. I don't think they were trying to be fashionable. I think they were just trying to revamp their market because no one needed furry carriage skins anymore because they were riding around inside of cars. King of Fur was Dubuque, Iowa. Dubuque. You see some early California jackets that have fur panels, maybe a fur D pocket or a fur front panel. That was definitely something about fashion. And then sometime in the 40s, you see the traditional bear jacket, which is a A1 style zipper jacket with two sheepskin front panels, very short, high on the waist, and worn by sort of dandies and rakes, you know, if you will, flaneurs, people who wanted to look a little bit cool. So that's a brief history of the Grizzly jacket. Now, as you can imagine, when I was in the vintage clothing business, finding cool, rare things to sell and them being worth more money, it would be a real miracle to find a great bear jacket, and it would mean money in the bank. Now, they were so rare that in my days and years of picking jackets, I only picked a couple. They're just not common. So, and that's the lamb fur kind, the more common kind. The other kind are just impossibly rare. So, as you can imagine, when I opened a leather jacket business, it became one of my essential desires to build a perfect Grizzly jacket. Not a replica, but my own design. So I got down to imagining, and I was sitting somewhere in LA during a trade show. I had a napkin and a pen, and it came to me, the design. So I imagined the front panel of that 40s, 50s bear jacket. What would it look like from some leather maker or jacket maker from the 30s who came up with the first design, the one that no one had ever seen before, the one that the later design was based on, because no one knows. So when I design, I try to imagine I'm a Jewish leather tailor. I'm in the West Coast because for sure, you know, bear jacket, even though it's worn in cold weather, it seems like something a crazy Northern California jacket designer would make, and what would that jacket look like? And I imagined an A1 Cossack jacket like my heron, what would it be if it was a Grizzly jacket? So the first jackets I made, I actually got a skin of North American buffalo with fur, a couple small young ones, and I created my heron jacket with the zipper and 2 buffalo fur panels and put 2 patch pockets on the front. I sold 3 of them. Quite frankly, they were amazing. And whoever owns those jackets is very lucky, because I couldn't make those jackets anymore. They're just too expensive. A hide of buffalo with fur on is an immensely expensive, basically a bison rug. Immensely expensive and hard to work with. We had to hand comb out the fur between each stitch. We had to shave it. We had to trim it. They were magical jackets. I wish I had made myself one. That was my prototype, but my actual drawing on the napkin is this jacket in my lap, which I call appreciatively the Wolverine Grizzly jacket. Now, why the Wolverine? Again, I like to name every jacket distinctly Canadian names. And for those of you who don't know, Wolverine is a rodent. It is considered by fur trappers and people who live in the north to be one of the singularly most vicious, dangerous, angry critters that lives in the wilderness. It's small, it's built for battle, full of sharp claws and teeth, and they have been known to fight off grizzly bears. So if I could imagine a perfect name for a tough, cool, fuck you, I'm in your face wearing a furry jacket name, it's a Wolverine Grizzly jacket. Also, my favorite Marvel comic book character, because he was Canadian, and I love the X-Men and collected comics. But all that being said, this is my Wolverine Grizzly jacket that I drew on that napkin. So, I'm going to briefly go into the design of this jacket. Some of it's going to be really interesting, some of it's going to be a little nerdy. But basically what you have here is a Cossack collar, slightly narrower than my heron. You have a zipper front with a 1930s replicated grommet zipper. I can go on for hours about zippers, but this is essentially one of the earliest prototypes of the first working zippers, copied in Japan, and I import them. I put them in, I hand grommet the grommets in the bottom to secure the bottom. They're made by Wildest, Japan. They have a perfect bell zipper pull. They have these 2 beautiful C-clamps at the top. They're essentially an excellent replica of a 1930s zipper. A little bit fragile with cotton tape. You have to use them properly or they break. So I put one of these very expensive perfect zippers on this jacket. I put 2 plackets down the front, which you see in a lot of 1930s jackets that are wool and leather, that are more casual jackets. But instead of the 2 wool panels in the front, I took an A1 design and I put 2 fur panels in the front. This is a unique design to my company and my mind. If you see anything similar today, you can bet that they follow my brand online and follow my design. I'll put that friendly. So I created this on a napkin probably 9 years ago, and I made my first model, and it became an incredibly successful jacket. So imagine in my head, I'm building a wool and leather jacket, but fur and leather, 1930s, a prototype for a grizzly jacket with hair on hide, but not lamb's wool, something tough, something that would withstand riding a motorcycle. That's this jacket. Now, there are some more important details that I came up with in the design. These pockets right here with that lovely shape, that sort of point and arc, those are uniquely Canadian 1930s pocket flaps. I will say this because I collect leather jackets. In the 1930s in Toronto and Vancouver, the chain stores produced a sports jacket that was very similar in body, shape, sleeve, and pocket to this style of jacket. And those Canadian jackets always had this pocket flap. So I can think the most prominent brand was Victoria Leather. So I put a uniquely identifying Canadian pocket flap on this jacket. This flap is not only stylish and looks cool with its cool deco-y shape on the front, but as you can see with this pocket, you could tuck it in and then it becomes a slash pocket. I'm going to show you. That's tucked in. Now I'm going to pull it out. And now it's a perfectly angled slash pocket. That is a Canadian feature of some Canadian jacket makers that came up with that and sold that as a stock feature on a lot of 1930s jackets. Okay, so we have the two front plackets for the zipper, the panels, the gussets just like the heron, the scallop collar, and of course you don't want the fur running up to the shoulder. So when I designed it, I made sure that there was a yoke on the front and on the back, so that if you were wearing a bag or a shoulder bag or a backpack, whenever you have that on fur, it's going to wear off. So in this design, this panel is inset, with the idea being you want the hard leather up here in case you're wearing any straps. This is how someone designing a jacket in the 1930s would think. So I basically tried to follow that principle. I have the same sleeves as I have on the heron, so no change there. Slight arc, a bit tubey, a little bit primitive. I have the same, excuse me, I've been inside too long. I have the same beautiful deco-y dip at the bottom of the front of the jacket where the zipper completes. You can see that. And now I'm going to show you the back. So we've talked about keystone backs in the past. This Wolverine jacket has a fur panel keystone back. You see how it's shaped like an entire single center keystone? This, to me, was an ultimate design for a Grizzly jacket, as in terms of making it beautiful but not overly complicated, simple, clean wearing but not overly done. And to date has been one of my best-selling jackets at Himel Brothers. So you don't have a side panel, you still have the gusset, but you split the back panel, two leather pieces and a keystone piece. So imagine taking a keystone back and expanding it into its simplest form. That's what you get with this Grizzly Heron jacket. Not practical. You wouldn't want to skid across pavement with fur because it might catch, but beautiful and well built and well designed and purpose designed. And I think that's one of the tricks of a 1930s design, was there was a constant beautiful sense of tension between perfect aesthetic, perfect design, and perfect function. So this guy's a bit of a radical jacket. Takes a really cool guy to want to wear it, but it's not as surprisingly strange once you are. As you can see with this one, I lined it with a beautiful Italian merino wool check. So it's a sort of combination of check and herringbone, and that makes it extra warm. But this is very light, smooth wool, so very good for wearing. I have a limited supply of this wool. It's a navy blue with a slight tan colored check pattern in it, and a single pocket on the left, because again, when you're wearing a tight-fitting jacket, you don't want too much stuff on the inside of the jacket. And this particular model has my original Wolverine patch with the wolf's head on it, which I still make, but I've updated my labels so to woven taffeta, just like the 30s, 40s, 50s. So that is my Wolverine Grizzly jacket. Just so you can see this grommet zipper, we can show you some close-ups. It's cotton tape. It's very strangely mechanical. It locks in the downward position. When you do it up, you have to make sure the pull is all the way down to this sort of strange, primitive box-like structure, and then that pin needs to go all the way down into the box till it touches this sort of loop there. And if it's all the way down and it's incorrectly, it will just slip up. And if it's not, it'll pull teeth off and rip. And then it'll just do up very smoothly. And when the zipper is pushed down, what means it locking, it has a little pin here. When you push it down, it won't move. You can't move it up, can't move it down. So you don't risk the jacket opening up with chest pressure. And these were very, very clever engineering features of early zippers from the 30s. Himel Brothers, Wolverine, Grizzly jacket, A1, 1930s, original design, copied by many, replicated by none. Everybody deserves one good thing. If you like this video, again, follow me on Instagram, IGTV, Himel Bros TV on YouTube. I have lots more videos there. You can check them out or just follow me because I need followers. Thanks so much.